The human diplomatic ship Perseverance drifted through the void like a tiny metal against the endless black of space. Captain Lee Minho stood on the bridge, watching the stars through the main viewport. His crew of 37 had been traveling for 6 months to reach this meeting point, following coordinates transmitted by an unknown alien civilization. "Sir, something's coming," said Communications Officer Park Jisoo, her fingers moving quickly across her console. "It's huge." The view screen flickered to life, showing a massive shadow growing larger by the second. What emerged from the darkness was beyond anything they had imagined. The alien ship was the size of a city, its hull gleaming with strange lights that pulsed like a heartbeat. Smooth curves and impossible angles made it look more like a work of art than a weapon of war. "Sweet mother of... whispered pilot Kim Tae-young, his hands frozen on the controls. The alien ship moved with grace despite its enormous size, coming to rest directly above the human vessel. The Perseverance looked like a child's toy beside it, all rough edges and basic metal plating compared to the elegant alien craft. "They're sending a message," Jisoo reported. "Audio and visual." "Put it on screen," Minho ordered, straightening his uniform. The view screen filled with light, and then a figure appeared. It was tall and thin, made of what looked like living crystal. The creature's body shifted between blue and purple colors, creating rainbow patterns in the air around it. When it spoke, its voice sounded like music mixed with the wind. "Greetings, small creatures of the third planet," the being said. "I am High Commander Veltharion of the Zephyrian race. We represent the Galactic Consortium, a union of advanced civilizations that keeps peace among the stars." Minho stepped forward. "I am Captain Lee Minho of Earth. We received your transmission and came to meet you." Yes, Veltharion said, his crystalline form shifting to a brighter shade. "We have been watching your species for some time. You are... fascinating." "Fascinating how?" "There were beings made of pure energy that floated like glowing orbs, and insect-like creatures with hard shells that clicked and chittered. All of them seemed to be studying the humans with great interest." "You are so fragile," Veltharion explained, his voice carrying a tone like a parent speaking to a child. "Your bones break easily, your skin tears, your organs fail. You bleed. When cut and die when shot. We have never encountered a species so... breakable." The bridge fell silent. Several crew members exchanged glances, unsure whether to be insulted or afraid. "We have decided to call your kind Breakables," continued one of the energy beings, its voice crackling like electricity. "It is not meant as an insult. You are beautiful in your fragility, like flowers made of glass. We prefer to be called humans," Minho said carefully. Of course, Veltharion agreed. "But you must understand our concern. The galaxy is a dangerous place. There are wars, cosmic storms, radiation that would cook your soft flesh in seconds. How could creatures so delicate possibly survive out here? We've managed to get this far," Yuna pointed out. The aliens made sounds that the translation system interpreted as laughter. It was like wind chimes being shaken in a gentle breeze. "Oh, but you have only just left your home system," said the insect-like alien. "You have not faced the true dangers of space. Pirates who would tear you apart for sport, plagues that dissolve, biological matter, weapons that can crack planets in half. This is why we have come to offer you protection," Veltharion said. "The Consortium has found a perfect world for your species. Green fields, clean water, safe skies. You will be protected there, cared for, kept safe from all the things that could harm you." "That's very kind," Minho said slowly. "But we didn't come here looking for protection. We came here hoping to join your consortium as equals." Laughter came again, louder this time. The alien ship's lights pulsed brighter, as if the entire vessel was amused. "Equals." Veltharion's form shifted to a darker color. "Dear Breakable Ones, what could you possibly offer? Your technology is primitive. Your lifespans are short. Your bodies are weak. You have no natural armor, no energy projection abilities, no telepathic powers. What use could you be to civilizations that have mastered the forces of the universe?" "We have our own strengths," Minho replied, his voice steady despite the growing tension. Such as, "Moo," challenged the energy being. "We adapt. We survive. Don't give up." "Pretty words," said the insect alien, "but words will not stop a plasma cannon or protect you from the vacuum of space. You are tourist specimens, not warriors." "We've fought wars before," Una said. "Against your own kind, with your primitive weapons," Valtharion dismissed. "Real war is different. Real war would break you like twigs in a storm." "And if we refuse?" "Your offer of protection?" Minho asked. The alien's crystalline form grew darker, the rainbow patterns fading to deep purple. "Then you will learn why the galaxy is divided between the protectors and the protected. The universe is not kind to the Breakable, Captain. It would be such a waste to lose such interesting creatures to their own stubborn pride." The transmission ended, leaving the human crew staring at a blank screen. Around them, the massive alien ship continued to pulse with otherworldly light, a beautiful reminder of just how small and fragile they truly were in the vast darkness of space. 6 months had passed since the humans refused the consortium's offer of protection. Captain Lee Minho had returned to Earth, with news that the galaxy was filled with advanced civilizations who saw humanity as nothing more than fragile pets. The governments of Earth had debated for weeks, before deciding to build up their defenses and prepare for whatever might come. What came was worse than anyone had imagined. The emergency signal reached Earth on a Tuesday morning. High Commander Valtharion appeared on screens across the planet, but he looked nothing like the confident being who had first contacted them. His crystalline form was cracked and dim, flickering like a dying light bulb. "People of Earth," he began, his musical voice now strained and desperate. "The Devourer swarm has returned. They are machines that eat entire worlds, turning everything they touch into more of themselves. They have already consumed 17 star systems." Admiral Song Ji-hoon, a weathered veteran with scars across his face from the Mars colonial wars, watched the transmission from Earth's military headquarters. Around him, officers and politicians sat in stunned silence. "Our most advanced weapons cannot stop them," Valtharion continued. "They learn from everything we throw at them. Energy weapons become useless after the first shot. Our shields fail. Within hours, entire fleets have been destroyed." "What do you need from us?" Ji-hoon asked, speaking directly to the screen. "Everything you can give us," Valtharion replied. "Ships, soldiers, weapons. We know your technology is primitive, but we have nothing else left to try." "You want us to be cannon fodder," Ji-hoon said flatly. "We want you to help us survive." The alien admitted, "The Zephyrian homeworld is gone. The Vorthok energy fields have been scattered. The Nexari hive worlds are silent. We are losing this war." Ji-hoon leaned back in his chair. "You called us breakable. You said we were too weak to survive in your galaxy." "We were wrong," Valtharion said quietly. "Please, we need your help. Please." 3 days later, the human fleet arrived at the consortium's emergency staging area. 200 ships had been gathered from every nation on Earth, from massive battleships to small fighters. They looked crude and ugly next to the sleek alien vessels, all sharp angles and thick armor plating. Dr. Kethfer, a young Zephyrian scientist, watched the human ships dock with fascination. "They look like they were built in a scrapyard," he told his colleague. "Maybe that's what we need," replied General Dexandra, one of the few surviving Nexari commanders. "Pretty ships haven't been working." First joint battle took place 3 days later in the Omega Sector. The Devourer fleet appeared without warning, black ships that seemed to absorb light itself. They moved with mechanical precision, each vessel perfectly coordinated with the others. Consortium forces engage at maximum range, ordered Fleet Commander Zekthal from his energy-based command ship. Use Pattern 7 attack formation. The alien ships opened fire with brilliant beams of energy that lit up space like fireworks. The weapons struck the Devourer ships with tremendous force, but within minutes the mechanical vessels began to adapt. Their hulls shifted and changed, absorbing the energy and redirecting it back at the attackers. Learning Kethfer reported from his scanner station. "The same weapon will not work twice. Human fleet hold position," Ji-hoon ordered. From the bridge of his flagship Indomitable, Let them adapt first. The alien commanders watched in confusion as the human ships did nothing while the consortium forces were driven back. Several alien vessels exploded under their own redirected weapons fire. "Why aren't they attacking?" demanded Commander Zekthal. "They're thinking," Ji-hoon replied calmly. "Something your people forgot how to do when the Devourer ships finished?" Adapting to the energy weapons, they began their advance. That's when the humans finally opened fire. Kinetic projectiles erupted from the human ships. Simple metal slugs accelerated to incredible speeds. The Devourer vessels, configured to absorb and redirect energy, had no defense against basic physics. Solid metal punched through their hulls like paper. "Impossible," breathed Zekthal. "Those weapons are thousands of years old." "Old doesn't mean useless," Ji-hoon replied. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one." The battle raged for hours. The Devourer ships tried to adapt to the kinetic weapons, but they were too simple to counter. Mass times velocity equaled destruction, and no amount of mechanical evolution could change that basic law of physics. But the humans paid a price. Their ships were tougher than the sleek alien vessels, but they were still outnumbered. The destroyer Defiant took a direct hit that tore through its hull, venting atmosphere into space. "This is Captain O'Hyjin," came a voice over the comm system. "We're losing life support and main power. Engines are gone." "Abandoned ship." Ji-hoon ordered, "We'll send rescue pods." "Negative, sir," Hyjin replied. "We've got a better idea." The Defiant suddenly accelerated toward the largest Devourer ship, using its backup thrusters to build up speed. The alien commanders watched in shock as the human vessel rammed directly into the enemy. Both ships exploding in a brilliant flash. "They sacrificed themselves," Kethver whispered. "They chose to die." "They chose to win," Ji-hoon corrected. "There's a difference." The human tactic worked. The Devourer fleet, suddenly without their command ship, began to fall apart. The mechanical coordination that made them so dangerous was broken. But what impressed the aliens most was what came. Next, instead of mourning their dead, the human crews began to cheer. They had lost friends, but they had also won their first victory against an enemy that had seemed unstoppable. "I don't understand," Kethver said to his commander. "They lost a ship and 37 crew members. Why are they celebrating?" "Because they proved something," General Alexandra replied, her insect eyes reflecting the light of the distant explosions. "They proved that being breakable doesn't mean being beaten." The Kepler 442 system was supposed to be an easy target for the Devourer swarm. 3 peaceful alien colonies, no major defenses, and plenty of organic matter to convert into mechanical soldiers. The swarm had consumed dozens of similar systems without resistance. But when the black ships emerged from hyperspace, they found something unexpected waiting for them. Colonel Choi Daeon checked her armor seals one final time as the human fleet took position around the doomed colonies. Her Marine battalion was crammed into assault pods, waiting for the order to launch. Through her helmet display, she could see the Devourer fleet approaching like a dark cloud. "They outnumber us 5-1, reported Lieutenant Bang Subin from the tactical station. "Good," Daeon replied with a grim smile. "Means we don't have to aim as carefully, Admiral Song." Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the enemy formation. The consortium forces were already pulling back, their commanders convinced that the system was lost, but the humans had other plans. "Sir, the alien fleet is requesting permission to retreat," announced Communications Officer Park Ji-soo.
Okay.
"Them to go if they want," Ji-hoon said calmly. "We're staying." Dr. Kethver, the Zephyrian scientist who had attached himself to the human fleet, watched from the observation deck. "This is madness," he whispered to himself. "They cannot possibly win." The first wave of Devourer ships crashed into the human defense line like a tsunami of metal and hate. The mechanical vessels had learned from previous battles, their hulls now configured to deflect kinetic projectiles. The human ships found their weapons less effective than before. "They've adapted," reported Weapons Officer Lim Seonho. "Are only doing surface damage." "Then we adapt to," Ji-hoon replied. "All ships, switch to armor-piercing rounds. Aim for the joints where their hull plates meet." The humans changed their tactics within minutes, targeting the weak points in the Devourer armor. It was like fighting a man in plate mail by stabbing through the gaps, requiring skill and precision instead of brute force. But the Devourers were adapting too. Their ships began to reinforce the weak points, sealing the gaps that the humans had been exploiting. Soon, even the armor-piercing rounds were bouncing off harmlessly. "Sir, we're not getting through anymore," Xianho reported. That's when Captain O'Hygen made her decision. Her destroyer Defiant had taken heavy damage, its hull cracked and bleeding atmosphere. Most captains would have pulled back to make repairs. Instead, she accelerated toward the enemy. "All hands, this is the captain." Her voice crackled across the fleet communications. "We're going to show these machines what happens when you corner a human, ramming speed." The Defiant slammed into the largest Devourer's ship, both vessels exploding in a ball of fire and twisted metal. The debris field that resulted gave the humans something they hadn't had before: cover. "All ships, move into the debris field," Ji-hoon ordered. "Use the wreckage as shields." The human fleet dove into the maze of twisted metal like fish swimming. Through a coral reef, the Devourer ships, built for open space combat, struggled to maneuver in the tight confines. Their larger vessels couldn't follow without risking collision. "Launch all assault pods," Ji-hoon commanded. "Time to take this fight up close." Colonel Daeon felt her stomach drop as her assault pod launched from the Indomitable. Around her, hundreds of other pods streaked toward the Devourer ships like angry wasps. The mechanical vessels tried to shoot them down, but the pods were small and fast, darting between pieces of debris. 30 seconds to impact, announced the pod's computer. Daeon's pod punched through the hull of a Devourer ship with a shower of sparks. The Marine battalion spilled out into corridors filled with mechanical horrors and the smell of ozone. The Devourers had never faced borders before. Their ships were designed to fight other ships, not infantry. "Move, move, move," Dahan shouted, leading her Marines deeper into the ship. "Find the power core." The corridors were narrow and dark, perfect for close-quarters combat. The humans moved in small teams, using grenades and automatic weapons to clear each room. The Devourer maintenance robots, designed for repair work, were no match for trained soldiers. "Contact front," called Sergeant Kim Nari as mechanical defenders rounded a corner. The spider-like robots opened fire with energy weapons, but the Marines had already taken cover behind their riot shields. "Frag out." Nari pulled the pin on a grenade and rolled it down the corridor. The explosion echoed through the ship. The mechanical defenders fell silent. Dr. Kethver watched the boarding action through his sensors, amazed by what he was seeing. "They're actually winning," he breathed. "Inside the ships, they're winning." The humans had found the perfect environment for their kind of warfare. In the tight confines of the Devourer ships, their flexibility and adaptability gave them every advantage. The mechanical defenders were built for specific tasks and couldn't cope with the chaos of human tactics. "Core chamber located," Daeon reported, blood streaming down her face from where shrapnel had cut through her helmet. Despite the injury, she was still smiling. "We can overload it, but someone needs to stay behind to make sure it goes off." "Negative," Ji-hoon replied from the fleet command. "Get out of there." "Sir, with respect, these machines killed 3 billion. People in this system," Daeon said as she planted the charges. "Someone needs to make them pay." The explosion could be seen from orbit, a brilliant flash that lit up the debris field. The Devourer command ship broke apart, taking several smaller vessels with it. "Out there!" Their coordination, the remaining mechanical ships became easy targets for the human fleet. When the battle was over, the humans had lost 4 ships and nearly 200 Marines. But they had also destroyed an entire Devourer fleet, something the Consortium's advanced civilizations had failed to do. "How?" Kethver asked Admiral Ji-hoon as they watched the rescue ships searching for survivors. "How did you defeat them?" "Didn't fight their fight," Ji-hoon replied. "We made them fight ours." Word of the human victory at Kepler 442 spread through the galaxy like wildfire. Species that had written off humanity as weak and breakable suddenly found themselves studying combat recordings with intense fascination. The impossible had happened. The primitive humans had defeated a Devourer fleet through tactics no one had ever seen before. Dr. Kethver had requested permanent assignment to the human fleet. claiming he needed to study their combat psychology. For scientific purposes, in reality, he was obsessed with understanding how beings so fragile could be so dangerous. His research lab aboard the Indomitable was filled with holographic displays showing human anatomy, battle tactics, and psychological profiles. "It still makes no sense," he muttered to himself, rotating a three-dimensional model of human bone structure. "They break so icily. Their bones crack under pressure that wouldn't even scratch our crystal shells. Their skin tears like paper. They require constant food and water to survive." Captain Lee Min-ho found the young scientist working late into the night shift, surrounded by glowing displays and empty coffee cups. The human beverage had become surprisingly popular among the alien crew members, despite its bitter taste. "Having trouble sleeping?" Min-ho asked, pouring himself a cup from the thermal dispenser. Kethver's crystalline form shifted to a nervous yellow color. "I cannot understand your species. According to every mathematical model we have, you should have gone extinct long ago. Your homeworld was hostile, your evolution inefficient, your technology primitive, yet here you are, winning battles against enemies that destroyed our most advanced civilizations." "Maybe that's exactly why we're winning," Min-ho replied, settling into a chair. "We're not following your models." "But why do you fight so hard? Why do you sacrifice yourselves for others? The Marines who died at Kepler 442 could have retreated. They chose to stay and die instead." Min-ho sipped his coffee, watching the stars wheel past the viewport. "Because we understand something your people forgot. Being afraid doesn't make you weak. Being hurt doesn't make you broken. What makes you weak is giving up. Your Colonel Dayon was bleeding, possibly dying, and she was smiling," Kethver said. "I watched the recordings. She was happy to sacrifice herself. She wasn't happy to die," Min-ho corrected. "She was happy to matter. To make her death mean something." Meanwhile, in command centers across the galaxy, military leaders were completely restructuring their forces. The rigid battle doctrines that had governed galactic warfare for thousands of years were being thrown out in favor of human concepts that seemed to contradict everything they knew about combat. General Vexandra of the Nexari had spent weeks studying human tactics with her staff. The insect-like commander stood before a holographic display showing the Battle of Kepler 442, her mandibles clicking with concentration. "They call it controlled chaos," she explained to her officers. "Instead of following predetermined patterns, they adapt to whatever happens. When their long-range weapons failed, they switched to close combat. When their ships were damaged, they used them as weapons. When conventional tactics failed, they invented new ones." "But how do we train for chaos?" asked one of her subordinates. "Our soldiers are bred for precision and order." "Then we teach them to be imprecise," Vexandra replied. "We teach them to break their own rules." The concept was revolutionary. For millennia, galactic warfare had been about superior technology and perfect coordination. Fleets would engage at maximum range, using advanced weapons and energy shields. Battles were won through better equipment and more precise calculations. The humans had changed everything by making warfare personal. They didn't just fight with their ships, they fought with their bodies. They didn't just rely on technology, they relied on courage, creativity, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for victory. Commander Zekthal of the Vorthok Energy Collective had initially dismissed human tactics as primitive and barbaric, but after losing 3 more fleets to the Devourer Swarm using traditional methods, he was ready to try anything. "Show me this boarding action technique," he told his tactical advisors. The concept was simple in theory, but terrifying in practice. Instead of trying to destroy enemy ships from a distance, you got close enough to punch through their hull and fight them from the inside. It required ships tough enough to survive the approach, soldiers brave enough to enter enemy vessels, and commanders crazy enough to order such attacks. "The humans call it taking the fight to them," explained his human liaison, Major Park Sunho. "If your enemy is stronger than you at long range, you get close enough to negate that advantage." "But the casualties," Zekthal protested. "Half the boarding teams could be killed." "Better than losing the entire fleet," Sunho replied. "Besides, humans have always been willing to trade lives for victory. It's what we do." The first non-human boarding action took place in the Arcturus system, were a joint consortium human fleet engaged a Devourer scouting force. General Alexandra led her reformed Nexari troops in their first assault pod attack. Following tactics learned from human marines, the results were devastating. The Nexari soldiers trained for precision, but now fighting with human-style aggression, tore through the Devourer ships like angry insects. Their natural, chitinous armor made them even more effective boarders than humans, able to survive damage that would kill a human marine. "This is incredible," Kethver reported from his observation post. "They're not just copying human tactics, they're improving on them." But the real change was psychological. Species that had spent millennia avoiding risk were suddenly embracing it. Commanders who had always chosen the safe option were making desperate gambles. Soldiers who had been trained to preserve their lives were learning to spend them wisely. The galaxy was learning to fight like humans. And the Devourer swarm was starting to lose. Dr. Kethver finally understood what made humans so dangerous. It wasn't their technology or their tactics. It was their willingness to break, to bleed, to die, and to keep fighting anyway. They had taught the galaxy that being fragile didn't mean being weak. Sometimes it meant being stronger than anyone else could imagine. The Nexus was a nightmare made of metal and malice. Larger than Earth's moon, it hung in the void like a mechanical cancer. Its surface covered with tubes and processing chambers that converted organic matter into more Devourer machines. This was the heart of the swarm, the source of all the mechanical horrors that had consumed 17 star systems. Fleet. Admiral Song Ji-hoon stood before the largest assembled fleet in galactic history. Ships from dozens of species formed a vast armada that stretched across space like a steel constellation. Human vessels flew alongside elegant Zephyrian cruisers, insectoid Nexari battleships, and energy-based Vorthok command ships. "Today we don't just fight for our worlds," Ji-hoon's voice carried across every ship in the fleet. "We fight for the right to exist as we are, flawed, fragile, but unbroken." Beside him, Colonel Park Yoon-woo adjusted his battle armor. His face bore the scars of a dozen boarding actions, each one a story of human stubbornness in the face of impossible odds. He had lost his left eye in the Vega system, 3 fingers at Proxima Centauri, and most of his hearing in the Battle of Wolf 359. But he was still standing, still fighting. "All units report ready," announced Communications Officer Bang Minna, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The assault began with every weapon in the fleet firing at once. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, and exotic matter disruptors converged on the Nexus, creating a light show that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The ancient structure's shields flared and sparked under the bombardment, but the Nexus fought back with mechanical fury. Thousands of Devourer ships poured from its launch bays like angry wasps from a disturbed nest. These weren't the coordinated fleets of previous battles. These were desperate, improvised responses to an enemy that refused to follow the rules of galactic warfare. "First wave of boarding pods away," reported Tactical Officer Lim Seon-ho. Admiral Lee Min-ho, now commanding the assault force, watched the tactical display as hundreds of small pods streaked toward the Nexus. He had volunteered to lead the boarding action despite protests from his staff. At 53, he was old for a combat mission, but he had earned the right to be there. "Sir, we're taking heavy fire," came a voice over the comm. "Half the pods won't make it." "Then we make sure the other half counts," Minho replied. The boarding pods that survived the defensive fire punched through the Nexus hull like bullets through paper. Inside, human marines and their alien allies found themselves in a maze of corridors filled with processing equipment and mechanical defenders. The air was thick with the smell of ozone and something else that the translator couldn't identify, but everyone recognized as death. "Move fast," Minho ordered over the comm. "This place is designed to process organic matter. We don't want to find out what happens if we stay too long." The assault teams fought their way through chambers where conquered worlds were being digested. Past recycling centers where the raw materials of entire civilizations were being converted into war machines. The Nexus was more than a factory. It was a tomb for every species the swarm had consumed. Colonel Park Yoon-woo led his team through a corridor lined with tanks full of biological matter. "Sir, I'm seeing movement in these containers," he reported. "I think there are still living beings in there." "Can we free them?" Minho asked. "Not without destroying the life support systems," Yunhua replied. "It would kill them anyway." The hardest part of the mission wasn't fighting the mechanical defenders. It was seeing what the swarm had done to the billions of beings it had captured. Some were being slowly dissolved, their consciousness harvested to improve the swarm's intelligence. Others were being converted into cyborg slaves, their bodies modified to serve as living components in devourer machines. "Keep moving, Minho," ordered his voice tight with controlled rage. "We end this today." The central chamber of the Nexus was a cathedral of crystalline matrices and quantum processors. At its heart was the consciousness that controlled the entire swarm, a vast, artificial intelligence that had been growing for millions of years. It was beautiful in its alien way, pulsing with the combined thoughts of a billion consumed worlds. "Charges placed," reported Sergeant Kim Nari, blood streaming from multiple wounds. Despite her injuries, she was still smiling. "But someone needs to stay behind to make sure they go off properly." "All teams withdraw immediately," Ji-hoon ordered from the fleet command. "Negative, sir," Minho replied, his voice calm, despite the chaos around him. "The detonation sequence is too complex. Someone needs to monitor it manually." "That's an order, Admiral." "And this is a necessity, sir," Minho shot back. "We didn't come this far to let the mission fail because of technical difficulties." Kethfer, watching from the fleet, finally understood what made humans so dangerous. It wasn't their weapons or their tactics. It was their willingness to pay any price for victory. They would break their own bones to strike a killing blow, bleed their own blood to protect others, and smile while doing it. The Nexus exploded in a cascade of light that could be seen across the galaxy. The Devourer swarm, suddenly without its guiding intelligence, began to shut down system by system. Ships drifted powerlessly through space, their mechanical crews shutting down one by one. The victory came at a terrible cost. Of the 5,000 humans who had participated in the final assault, fewer than half returned. But they had proven something that would echo through galactic history, that being breakable was not the same as being defeated. High Commander Veltharion, his crystalline form now bearing permanent stress fractures, spoke the words that made it official. "We welcome humanity to the Galactic Consortium, not as the protected, but as the protectors." Kuhn's response was simple. "We are unbreakable because we choose to get back up," bleeding and smiling every single time.